In this world, there are these folks called raiders. They're like hunters who go after monsters and they get paid for it. They also protect people, which is really cool, but it's not an easy job. It's dangerous and risky. The thing is, even though it's dangerous, people see raiders as heroes. Being a raider makes hearts race with excitement. But sometimes when a raider's heart races, it's because danger is close. Now imagine we're in this cozy coffee shop. There are two guys talking. One of them looks really mad about some offer. The other guy, in the fancy suit and glasses, tells him to calm down. He says the mad guy should think about it because money is needed. The second guy gets that it's no surprise. See, there's this young woman from the Raider Bureau. She's the one who gives job offers to people like the mad guy. She kind of tricks him into going on a dungeon raid. The mad guy thought the call was for a good job, but as soon as he heard what it was, he got super upset. He asks the suit and glasses guy why there's nothing else. He wonders why even lower ranked folks can find work. The suit and glasses guy explains that raiders who fight up close don't get tasks often, and it's not about their rank. See, the jobs are being taken by magicians now. Those folks have magic powers, so they're chosen more. Other raiders struggle to find jobs too. Wars have made some of them hurt, and bosses don't want to deal with that. It's easier to hire magicians who fight from far away. They don't get hurt as much. Plus, they're really good at working together. The mad guy knows all this. He also knows there aren't any jobs for raiders like him right now. He curses himself for not becoming a magician 11 years ago. Flashback to when he was in middle school, 11 years back. He took this test and did well. It showed he could go to a special place called Mills Academy. It's where they train raiders professionally. His magic ability was at 97%. There was this girl who was super good at magic, and she had 92%, so he was doing really, really well. But here's the thing. Even though he was great at magic, he decided to become a warrior. He didn't have a strong reason for it. He just didn't think magicians were that great. He thought they were weak and needed warriors to help them kill monsters like Tarak. Looking at the magic users, he couldn't help but wonder if his life would be better if he had chosen to become a magician. Usually raiders stopped developing around the age of 20. There was no use in regretting, as nothing would change anyway. The man in the suit continued, "Jaehyun, this opportunity doesn't come often. I had considered offering this job to others, but after considering your situation, I decided on you." Once upon a time, Jaehyun's talent had made magicians envious. The guy clenched his hand into a fist, anger welling up within him. Realizing that he was now just a useless D-rank warrior, he thought about the immense difference between his past and present. The contrast was too stark, and he agreed to the man's offer. The guy in the suit was surprised by his acceptance. They sat across from each other, the silence hanging between them. The warrior realized that survival in this harsh swamp was his only option, even if it meant taking up such a job. The man seemed pleased, setting up a meeting for the next morning at 7:30. He promised to provide details about the location and emphasized the importance of punctuality. The guy stood up, picked up his drink, and with a touch of resentment said, "See you later. You've got a lot of work to do." He reassured the warrior, urging him not to worry and to go about his own business. The man explained that he also needed to leave, reminding him once more about the scheduled meeting. With these words, they parted ways. The scene shifted, showing our hero standing by a tree. He had a sword on his back, a shield resting nearby, and protective gear on his hands and knees. Warriors and mages surrounded him, all waiting by a teleporter located within a massive tree. Checking the time, it was already 8:52, and young woman they were waiting for still hadn't arrived. With an exhale of frustration, he wished he had immediately communicated his absence. Opening his eyes, he surveyed his surroundings. As a D-rank warrior compared to Woomin, who was an A-rank mage, why was he even working in this raider bureau? He could have joined any guild. He felt like he was wasting his time here. Before we continue, take a moment to answer the question of the day. What stat would you invest in if you had a system appear in front of you? Comment down below for a chance to be shouted out. Now back to the recap. Suddenly, a silhouette appeared in his mind. "Useless bastard," came the voice, and Jaehyun said nothing. His expression changed to shock as he recognized Myung-ho. A mixture of happiness and awkwardness filled the air as they met. They discussed work and its absence, sharing a common understanding. The man expressed contentment at the bureau's decent pay, and our hero reluctantly agreed. Myung-ho said that there was nowhere else to work except here, and looked at the guy without seeing any reaction. He noticed that all the passion of people for battle classes was gone, and also said, "What is the honor of being a magician and shooting fireballs from behind the backs of comrades?" Jaehyun was outraged. What a passion if he was starving to death. His friend asked him to do everything efficiently and then they will drink a bottle of saju. The hero said without emotion, "Well, not bad." The man doubtfully spoke about the money and remembered that the last time he paid, the guy scratched his head and said nothing in response. The man winked, also scratched his head, and promised that this was the last time he would pay for it. Jaehyun smiled, embarrassed that he owed him something again. Their conversation was interrupted by a man calling for everyone to gather at the entrance to the dungeon, leaving in half an hour. The warriors weren't happy. Myung-ho exhaled and said it was time to pack up. Jaehyun thought about it and took out his phone. There are two things a raider needs to remember when hiking. First, it is blind luck, luck that can inspire any of the raiders. Most often it paralyzes the brain and becomes fatal carelessness at the moment when a person ceases to soberly assess the situation. The dungeon begins to test its strength. What the raider has now, is it luck or the tragedy behind it? He was interrupted by a Myung-ho again. "Hey Jaehyun, why are you stuck there staring at your phone again? Are you looking at a picture of your girlfriend?" The guy laughed and said it was nothing important. After looking at his phone again, there was a picture of him with his mom on it. He promised to be back soon, and went to the dungeon. We find ourselves in a stone room at the end of which are mages with staffs, and in front of them are warriors holding back the attack of evil spirits. The mage yells at them to hold their shields tight and keep them alive even when they're dead. Jaehyun was already exhausted. Exhausted magicians cast spells. They summoned the divine fire giant. Beams of light flashed from behind the warriors. The firebomb destroyed the enemies. The battle ended. The defenders exhaled. Jaehyun gazed at the Meteor Guild, a group of new magicians gaining quick popularity. They seemed to be on the rise, and the chances of you getting hurt were low. It was break time, and everyone was resting. A man explained the next plan to our hero, a battle with the boss. It wouldn't be easy, especially for him. The man mentioned how old age wasn't so fun. He wished he had trained more when he was younger to level up. The guy replied confidently that he was still as energetic as ever, and even a level higher than the older man. The man questioned if he had hit an object, as good things tend to fall in this dungeon. Jaehyun had doubts, so he checked the screen's information. Suddenly everything went haywire. Confusion filled him as he tried to understand the situation. The system seemed to be glitching. The guy got frustrated, and a message popped up. The SEO system wasn't working. Communication with the user was lost, and the system launch was cancelled without reason. Jaehyun was shocked. What could this mean? Then a green ball materialized, guiding him on where to go. The system alerted about an unknown object invading and initiated recovery in safe mode, but the message vanished right away, leaving the guy baffled. The man asked what he was talking about, and the guy hesitated before explaining. Another ball appeared before the man's face. Jaehyun told him to follow the light. The ball moved, and Jaehyun followed. Myung-ho, worried about the boy, wondering if he had a fever, assured him he was fine, but truthfully, he was just as confused. Jaehyun continued following the orb's light, distancing himself from the group. The system still didn't work. An error appeared. He had become an awakened one a decade ago, and the system had never shown damage like this. He pondered if the mysterious voice he heard was related to this malfunction. The system failed again, invaded by the unknown object. As he pieced everything together, he considered it might be some kind of change. He even thought that Aesir could have originated from Asgard, a term connected to ancient gods like Odin and Thor. This system was humanity's last hope. 20 years ago, disaster struck. A colossal tree grew in the Pacific Ocean, covering the sky and its foliage within 9 days. Some thought it was the apocalypse's sign, others a divine blessing. In reality, it was a world tree from an old legend. When the tree's growth stopped, monsters began invading, causing countless deaths. The survivors suffered from hunger and plague, and people fell into despair, but soon they had hoped. The first awakened, a person with God's power, emerged among them. There were also raiders who hunted monsters. The Aesir system, a powerful weapon, was controlled by such people. But if there were changes in it, it was hard to think positively. Jaehyun followed the light and came to a huge door. It was the gateway to treasures, and he couldn't believe it. A hidden room behind this gate was extremely rare in high-ranked dungeons. Usually you could find special and even rare items there. Jaehyun was very happy because one treasure from such a trove could be worth several 100 million. He thought if he found a Class A or above item, he could finally escape his dark days. He asked if the Lord existed and requested higher class items. Opening the door, Jaehyun found himself in a spacious room surrounded by columns with lamps. He couldn't believe such a space could be hidden inside. What he saw on TV wasn't fiction. In the middle of the room stood a ball emitting a lot of light. Jaehyun realized this was the object and went to it. After touching the ball, the system notified him of new equipment and asked if he wanted to see its information. He was glad the system responded at the perfect time. The item was the Lost Eye of Odin, a mythical class. Jaehyun was startled, but reading about it cheered him up. The best item he had sold before was a class item that went for tens of billions, but this was a mythical class, the only one in the world. Now he wouldn't be ignored by guilds, no more being cannon fodder in dungeons. He decided to try it before selling it. Just as he was about to put it on, the system interrupted him. He was scared he might have lost everything. Selling it on the black market could earn him billions. He realized he didn't want to be in dirty dungeons anymore. He couldn't raise his level in his 20s and didn't think the eye would be useful. The system crashed, but he was used to it. In the world of dungeons, unexpected situations were common. They were either lucky breaks or tragic events. Jaehyun headed back to the warriors. The main excuse is him in front of the magician and asks him to wait a little longer, and then the guy appears from behind the magician who shouts at him to hurry up because they are already leaving. The guy, bowing before the magician, apologizes for being late and promises that this will not happen again. Later, the man taps the guy on the shield and asks him not to get sour. He replies that it's okay, everything is fine. He also says that soju is on him tonight. You can't always be a freeloader. The man agrees in surprise. They catch up with the others. The hero notices that when they are inside the dungeon, there are no laws and regulations. Everything remains within these walls. Bragging about finding an expensive thing is tantamount to suicide. Standing in line, Jaehyun thinks that it would be wise to sell the eye after the raid is over. The most important thing is not to attract attention. The magicians say that once the formation is reformed, let's continue. Then everything starts to sparkle above them, an explosion occurs, and purple smoke begins to fill the room. Everyone coughs. Jaehyun realizes that the smoke is poisonous. If he breathes, he will die. "We need to get out of here," the man shouts. The guy invites everyone to leave the dungeon right away. At the same time, he sees the man being stabbed by a sword. The frightened hero rushes to run. He understands that those explosions, toxic smoke, and dead people weren't caused by monsters. He is sure that dungeon thugs were involved. Their goal is to destroy the Meteor Guild. If he goes to the exit, he will come across toxic fumes and there may be killers. When waiting, it's better to stay inside. Now the guy is angry that everything is going so badly. Now is not the time to wind snot on his fist. He found a mythical item. He will not give up so easily. A silhouette appears behind him and launches an attack. The guy dodges. The silhouette says, "I knew you'd survive, Jaehyun." The shocked hero sees young woman in front of him. He reminds our hero that he promised to come today. Our hero, judging by his expression, understood who was standing in front of him. So he asked, "Is this poisonous smoke really the hand of young women and also their meteor group?" Young woman made an incredible face that could let everyone know that he was satisfied with his work. As soon as our protagonist heard this, he realized that he needed to calmly understand the situation. So at the same time, he asked the reason for his action. But the only thing young woman did was throw up his hands and say that it was his sponsor's request, and decides many people hate this Meteor Guild. After all, when you disrespect other groups, then of course you quickly earn yourself a bad name. This is understandable to absolutely everyone. At this point we can understand that dungeon thugs make good use of the narrow passages of the cave to fulfill their dirty contracts. Our hero was sure that the attack on the Meteor Guild just happened in the zone only thanks to them. This was all putting him in a very uncomfortable position, because would he actually be able to deal with his opponent? But as soon as he felt the energy coming from young women, he realized that all this was impossible because he was a ranked magician. Such people only make up 2% of the entire population of the country. While at this time Jaehyun had a D rank, he wasn't considered weak nor strong. Their goal was to keep quiet. But he realized the system might be closed, trapping him. He wasn't sure if escape was possible. Running away felt dishonorable, yet he had no choice. He wanted to be there for his friend Myung-ho, who always made him laugh. But it seemed impossible. With the appearance of an Yggdrasil tree, the world turned cruel, leaving no room for the weak. As Jaehyun turned to young woman, he couldn't see clearly. He narrowly avoided attacks, reacting just in time. He gazed at young woman's face, seeing only determination. His goal went beyond the Meteor Guild. Young woman continued firing, pushing him to flee. Why would he target a simple D-rank raider? He questioned his worth. An image surfaced, showing his insignificance. "Did my own father want me dead?" he asked young woman. He laughed, revealing his father's involvement. Memories of his mother and his own near death surfaced. Saddened, he asked why. Young woman smiled, sharing the twisted plan. Jaehyun's life was nearly forfeit, but his mana surged, growing stronger. Young woman shot chains, urgency in his eyes. He aimed to end it all. As soon as the main character locked onto the charging attack with his enhanced vision, it shattered. At that moment he couldn't see clearly because Odin's lost eye was being used against him. He hoped he wouldn't have to sell it. Young women shouted, insisting the magic couldn't be dispelled. But the main character's sole desire was to defeat him in vengeance. The Odin's lost eye had a new power. It could absorb and create skills. A few moments after Jaehyun declared his intentions, rapid chains, once belonging to young women, materialized behind him. It seemed impossible. How could a warrior like Jaehyun master a spell that had taken years for others? Young woman explained he didn't know how he learned the ultimate spell, yet he was confident our hero wouldn't stand a chance. The chains of both opponents clashed. Young woman, aware of his weakness, evaded and attempted a spell, unfamiliar to the main character. It failed. Our hero unleashed a new skill, universal derivation, summoning another chain. Young woman's defense shattered, the chain hurtling towards him. The explosion engulfed them upon impact. Our hero approached the wounded opponent, whose broken glasses lay nearby. In his eyes, a mixture of defiance and desperation was evident. It was clear that Jaehyun's end was near. After the battle was over, our main character simply fell because he had no stamina or mana left. It was clear in his eyes that he could no longer go on. He did not even think that his end would be like this, because immediately after a successful find, he would die. It wasn't even surprising that he was lucky today, but Death, who is compared to a girlfriend that the raider just doesn't want to go on a date with, turned out to be incredibly cool. So as soon as he closed his eyes, the system hung up. And then, a new control system was installed. It was even written that it can load at the point in the past that it wants to return to. As soon as he read this message, he realized that if they were talking about his past, it could only mean that he could have been saved. He couldn't tell if this was just another change, if it was going to be a good thing or a tragedy. But apparently Tom didn't care anymore because he wasn't in a very good state to have a choice at all. It was the only solution to survive, so he started the restart. Beautiful women appeared in front of him who were most likely Valkyries. They were blindfolded, but they still held out their hands. They were talking in an ancient language, which of course he didn't understand. But the only thing the system told him was that he had received the new passive skill, which meant that from now on he would become an enemy of the Aesir. So the gods watched him, or rather began to. As soon as it was all over, he woke up in his bed. He couldn't believe that this had actually happened. Looking at his hands, a message appeared in front of him that he had successfully moved to the past. He couldn't believe it because was it all a dream? Did it really happen for real? He thought that it was really a dream, so long that he even forgot that his own mother was alive. He didn't want to interrupt it, so as soon as he saw his mother, he immediately threw himself into her arms, sobbing violently. As he did so, our protagonist moved to November 15th, 2020, but some restrictions were imposed on him because the body was set to only 20%. He noticed that it was actually the apartment he used to live in. The only difference was that the system constantly started giving him a task. The first one was rest, which was to restore his stamina to 80%. The difficulty level was the lowest, but the reward was an empty card. After all, he knew that there was something he needed to figure out. It was the reboot of the new system that brought him back to the past. Of course, such turns cannot surprise him because strange things happened to him. So if what had happened could give him new insights, then he could definitely adapt to similar situations. And that was the main thing. Since the system moved him exactly 11 years ago, now he should have been in the 3rd grade, in the 3rd year of training. What is happening? But this time he definitely won't become a swordsman. As he looked at the calendar, his excitement grew. He was going to become a magician. That was his new goal. While he and his mother sat down for breakfast, she noticed his unease. Something was bothering him, she thought. He had always been determined, but now he was crying. She put down her utensils and asked gently, "Did something happen, dear?" He brushed it off, saying it was just a bad dream. But then he gathered the courage to tell her what was really on his mind. She assumed he might be worried about the danger of becoming a raider, a prestigious but perilous profession. She suggested he continue at a regular school if he didn't want to attend the academy. However, he surprised her by revealing his desire to join the magic department instead of choosing the path of a warrior. At first she supported his choice, but she noticed something unusual in his words. He had always been so focused on becoming a warrior. She approached him, her curiosity evident, and asked if he was sure about this decision. She wanted him to think about his passion and purpose rather than just money or prestige. His mother's words moved him deeply. He shed tears but realized it wasn't the time to cry. He had to get stronger, to avenge his father's rank in the Raiders. After a brief rest, he received a quest card, a fresh start to his journey. Each day he trained rigorously, Yet he couldn't quite understand his new system's tests. The only certainty was his ability to see the future, to know secrets and ruins. His remarkable memory helped, reminding him of his past role as a dungeon guide. He only had combat skills, which made sense for a future warrior. Sitting at his desk, he examined his skills and stats on the information board. He noticed a peculiar pattern. His level and stats had decreased significantly, except for his passive abilities. He read about the attention of the gods effect, which explained why his passive skills remained unchanged. This effect accelerated his growth, increasing his characteristics with each level. The thought of divine surveillance unsettled him, but he was determined to understand his other skills. Diving into the details of the absolute God's Eye passive skill, he could unveil illusions and uncover truths. The fast chain he reached rank allowed him to attack quickly and even paralyze foes. However, there were some parts he couldn't grasp. What was the absolute God's Eye for? Yet the super fast chain was really cool and interesting. Looking at its features, he realized physical strength wasn't crucial for a magician. Agility mattered. Dexterity wasn't just extra, it was essential. He figured out that unlike mana, which boosted power, endurance was important. It upped the tiredness limit for repeated actions. With each level, investing in stamina showed its effect. Knowing this, he faced a new question: what to learn first? The super fast chain was great for attacking, but copying high-level spells wasn't useful without mana. Healing wasn't about his own needs, but about gaining value. Remembering how magicians were once mistreated, he understood healers were admired, whether in medicine or elsewhere. Learning healing could boost his authority. He leaned back, pondering his unique skills. Not easy, especially after the fight with young women. It showed using cards wisely mattered, as their number wasn't certain. Lost in thought, his phone rang. Kim Yoo-jun, his childhood friend. She dreamt of being a raider, but tragedy struck. Remembering her dying in his arms, he realized he could change her fate. Reading their messages, he noticed the name Yu Sung-yoon, a holy saint with healing magic. He decided to go out, telling his mum he'd be back soon. Meanwhile, the Holy Virgin, Yu Sung-yoon, had a packed schedule. Lectures, raids, dungeons, and a flight to the USA awaited. Her driver noticed her worsening condition, blaming a bad message. He wished he could help her. Understanding her selfless dedication led to her condition. He hoped that if someone else started to master such a skill, they would definitely be able to cure the chairwoman. He knew that if things continued like this, the Holy Maiden of South Korea would soon leave them, because she definitely wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. Well, of course, after a little time, we can see that our protagonist has already met with the same childhood friend. She led him into the crowd, saying that there will now be a real pandemonium, and that they will be in the very center. And of course, when Jaehyun saw her, he couldn't help but make fun of her. So he asked Yoonjun had invited him just because she was afraid of getting lost. At the same time, she began to say that this was not true, and in general, why did he take it? Red cheeks appeared on her face as well as tears in her eyes. The main character asked in this case to let go of his hand, but this time he was even more embarrassed, so he did not miss his opportunity to once again say something. Excellent in school, also an outstanding athlete, so why does she forget the road every day? That girl was very hopeful. She started talking about how she was the only one who was listening to the lecture. Was Yu Sun-yoon so easy to see in person? Jaehyun wanted to copy the magic of sacrifice today because it would definitely be very useful in the future. Because who knows, he might even have better connections in South Korea. Both characters had already sat down on their chairs, but the only person who was waiting for this performance was a girl. She was all eager, and our main character understood that this was actually a lesson about treatment. The master of Yeonhwa Guild was the Holy Virgin Yu Sun-yoon. She is known not only in Korea, but also abroad. Because at a time when healers were not so common, the Holy Virgin fought from the front lines or treated the wounded. But he knows one thing that almost no one knows. As soon as he thought about it, the performance had already started. Yu Sun-yoon came on stage and everyone started cheering for her, not even knowing that in a few months her condition would get worse. It would happen during the Itaewon raid. The magic of sacrifice would be the reason, because there was only one way to help her. But as soon as he thought about it again, the girl who was sitting next to him started screaming, so he asked her to shut up. Yu Sun-yoon went on to say that they were all going through an era of disaster and decline right now, because they're citizens who had given too much in their lives in the fight against monsters. Many died, but now that she took up this post, she promised everyone that their situation would improve soon. This knowledge of the living awakened is only a fifth willing to cede to the raiders as well as protect humanity. In her words, there were absolutely all the good feelings that she felt towards everyone she wanted to say in general, that they needed courage. She asked all the awakened ones from all over the world to stand in front of the common enemy, join their ranks, and fight for world peace. A childhood friend of our main protagonist talked about how Yusun Yun sounded incredibly cool. Yes, and our hero believed that his Yusun Yun was right because most of the awakened are afraid of raiding. As soon as it was over, he knew that fighting the monsters was definitely not an easy task, and even before jumping through time, he was only going to sell the eye to end it all. But now, as soon as they got up from their seats, he continued to listen to Yujun, who was completely delighted. Yusung Yun, she said, should be her role model. As usual, Jaehyun didn't miss the opportunity to make fun of her. Yujun was shocked. She talked about how her mum might let them both down, but he reassured her that he would fix it himself. He also decided to choose a magic class. To everyone's surprise, he said that he would somehow teach her magic because they would start with theory step by step. Yujun went to find out why he changed classes, but he just walked away, leaving her alone. At the same time, he actually went in the direction Yusu Young-yoon went and met her driver, who was talking on the phone. He in turn noticed our character, so he asked for forgiveness because the chairman now does not accept any gifts, to which our main character said that he just came to see us. The man thought that this was just another fanatic who was obsessed with raiding, so Jaehyun asked him to listen. He told him that you can't show up without a reason because he will put the saint in an awkward position, but at the same time, Jaehyun told the guard to listen to him because he knows that she had an incurable disease, but he can cure her. The driver immediately took him by the clothes and began to question him about where he heard this information and how did he know about the chairwoman's illness. But the main protagonist only asked him not to shout about it to the whole street, and there were people there. At the same time, when our hero was lifted into the air, the windows in the car opened and she appeared. She asked Jaehyun if he could take responsibility for his words, to which he replied that of course he could cure her, that he could handle it. Yusung-yoon looked at him with her own eyes and realized that if it was a hoax, he would have been revealed right away. But he was acting too confident. Is there really something to rely on? Yusung-yoon immediately asked her driver how much time they have left before leaving because if there was time, they could talk to the young guy in a quiet place because there were too many ears. As soon as they sat down at the table, as soon as they arrived at the place, Yusung-yoon got down to business. She immediately asked how he knew about her illness. Jaehyun in turn said that he couldn't say it, but if she wanted to know about it, then he wouldn't treat her. Yusung-yoon realized that there was a cheeky guy in front of her. She laughed a little, but at the same time became more serious, asking him about how she would keep her promise and how would he cure her. It was at this point that our protagonist directly said that he was just going to copy her sacrifice skill. At the same time, the guard started shouting because did our character understand that it was a unique ability of the chairman? Because how did someone even want to copy magic, the formula of which they do not even fully understand? We, in turn, understand that a unique ability is a skill that is higher than S rank. It can only be obtained from an ancestor or by self-discovery. An ordinary spell can be mastered with the help of a form, but the formula of a unique one simply cannot be understood. Such an ability could not be copied because it could be possessed either by the owner himself or by his family. That's what everyone thought. He said they wouldn't have liked it if they had. Yusun Yoon, on the other hand, asked him to calm down because they had to listen to such a young man first. It's not like he wants to heal her with his own sacrificial skill. Is it about how much damage you take when you use the spell? If it's a big penalty, you need a stronger healing spell. Like you can't use a weak healing spell to fix a big spell's damage. Yusun Yoon got sick because of her own special power, but she can't cure herself by giving something up. His way is the right one. Sacrificing means giving a gift to the god, so Yusu Yun can't use her power to heal herself. You can't trade your life for your life. Then there's Yusun Yun. He decided to believe the hero and used his power right away. He had to prove he could heal her. Jaehyun saw everything going well, so he took out a blank card from his pocket. The system gave him the card so he could learn a new spell. While he learned Yusun Yun's spell, he could also use the card. He said people didn't trust him, so he had to trust them to earn money. He could also use donations to start. Everyone was surprised because he used a skill that couldn't be copied. What will happen next? Find out next time by staying tuned for our future recaps. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more great recaps.